Hi everyone, my name is David Martino. I'm a member of the AVLI instructional design team, and I'm going to chat a little bit with you about how Flipgrid as a tool might be used to help foster relational class culture. So in the context of the article that you read, which was all about building class culture as a way to preempt struggles that we might have with our students around their behavioral engagements, specifically, are they showing up to class? Are they doing the work that's been assigned? Do we feel that their presence in a real, authentic manner that suggests their involvement, which ties the behavioral to the emotional engagement? The article suggests that a way to preempt that is to foster a class culture at the onset that would support and enliven students' desires to participate in the academic work that is necessary to be in school. And in addition to that, to just help to build a healthy set of relationships that are the vital touchstone of Catholic education. So the first thing we want to talk a little bit about is, what is relational culture? When we think about relational culture, we want to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Who speaks? Who listens? Who is recognized? In a relational culture, speaking and listening are not given equal weighting. I think in the traditional classroom, we evaluate our sense of students' engagement by their participation, their active voiced participation, their speaking. And I think that what we tend to do in that is that we tend to devalue the importance of listening as a precursor to speaking. And by that, what I mean is that students need to feel heard before they may feel confident enough or secure enough or trusting enough to speak. And that's not all students, of course. We have some extroverts in all of our classes who, first day of class, 5 minutes in, have told you everything, and who will be the sort of the vital, pulse of a classroom. But we also know that we've had a lot of experiences with students who might be a little more introverted, who seem to be on the margins of a class, but through a reflection or an offering in writing or some alternate format, reveal to us that they have been very present to the class, to the ideas, to the movements, to the humors, and that they may share a lot with us that we otherwise might have missed had we only stayed in the domain of the speaking. And so when we think of our class culture, we have to really think about ways that we can open up opportunities for speaking, but primarily through opportunities for listening. What we ask students to say should be in relation to what we have asked students to hear. And in a relational class culture, the answer to that, what is each other, is recognition. We're trying to build a safe space, a trusting space in which students feel that they can A, speak themselves, and B, that they feel confident that when they do that, they will be heard, they will be seen. And that creates an affirmation cycle that helps to become the backbone of a relational class culture that has high emotional engagement, and which wards off matters of student disengagement by the simple fact that students feel like they belong to this group. And it's not simply something that happens to them, as in a place they go to have work assigned, to then have to submit the work. It's these just purely behavioral actions. A high degree of emotional engagement is the backbone of healthy, vital, cognitive engagement, that academic and behavioral engagement. So, what are some useful tools that we can engage with through Flipgrid? And by tools here, I don't mean online technology tools such as Flipgrid. I think we're talking here about how Flipgrid can help us to leverage ideas as tools, organization as tools, methods of encounter as tools to help bring about increased student trust. So the first thing I just want to talk to you a little bit about is using check-ins. And check-ins may already be something that you use in your classroom, but they may not be. So check-ins, as I understand them, come from a long tradition in which we try to separate the academic investment and behaviors of the classroom from the personal, and we try to open the classroom space, the context of that space, the space that we can learn who's in front of us and present a bit of ourselves, in relation to those students through sharing in the check-in in a non-academic or a non-content specific way. So a check-in might be something as simple as, if you were a color today, what color would you be? If you were going to be a vehicle today, what vehicle would you be? If you were going to be a kitchen tool, what tool from the kitchen would you be today? And those seem like very harmless questions, but they potentially reveal a lot about where a student might be in that moment. And the more students understand that, the more they are thoughtful about the answers that they give. And so, if a student tells you that they're a beat up old car struggling to drive up a hill, rather than a student telling you that they're a race car in fifth gear barreling down the finish line. I mean, those are two very different kinds of emotional investments within those two images. And that should give us a clear sense of the different places that each of those students may potentially find themselves. Why that benefits us is it gives us a sense of who to be attentive to and in what way, and what those students may need in that particular class, or if there's a pattern of sharing that you notice. There are other check-ins or follow-ups that we might need to engage with particular students. And the check-in can also just be lighthearted and fun. Students might wonder about, why did Johnny say that they were a rusty old Chevette versus why did Mary say that she was a Corvette? And students get to hear a little something different from each other and wonder about the person behind that word. And so the check-in is not intended to be a long, extensive explanation. It can be simply one word, or it can be one or two sentences at most. Something simply to sort of put an idea in the minds of each other. Again, this would be a tool in which we share verbally, but in which the wonder allows us to really foster the listening skill that we've been talking a bit about. So you might run a series of weekly check-ins through Flipgrid. Maybe at the beginning of the week on the Monday, you set up a grid for the check-in in which students can maybe not respond to each other and use it purely as a relational listening activity, or maybe you've set it up in such a way that they might ask one probing question or a sort of a question to each other about maybe what a person meant by that color, that car, that kitchen tool, etc., or maybe comment in some kind of a way. So you can limit and or open up the parameters around what that sharing for the check-in looks like based on what you want to get out of it, I think. What that does is it creates a sense of community. It creates a sense in which students are speaking to each other and responding to each other, which is a foundational element of trust building. Trust building is probably the most challenging thing to develop in a community, in a classroom, often because students may come in with previous experiences of each other, maybe previous biases towards each other, predisposed notions of who each other are. And that's one of the ways that the check-in and the following tool, the norms and values, can potentially disrupt some of those preconceived biases and ideas about who we are for each other. So I'm going to shift from the trust building, I'll kind of run through that throughout, to the norms and values. And norms and values is something that the article talks about. I think it talks about it there as agreement setting. But basically at the beginning of a school year, if you're going to be transitioning in and out of a live class and to the online, it's probably a good idea to establish with the class, have the class collaborate and share together what they feel they need to be at their best as students and as peers for each other. And so it's a very conscious metacognitive moment where you ask students those types of questions. What do you need to be at your best? What do you need to achieve? What do you need to be at your best for someone else in a classroom context? And they can offer those things again through Flipgrid, through multiple sharings. You can have a couple of grids related to each particular question about what they might need themselves and they might offer to each other. So once they've been through a couple of rounds, the teacher can then pull and collate some of the most salient commonalities around what students say that they need. And from those needs, we can establish norms and values of the class. So some examples that I've come across have been students saying that they need humor, they need lightheartedness, some need patience, some need focus and diligence. And so the needs expressed will be particular to the students. I think for students, seeing a list of norms and values established, almost like a class contract at the beginning of the year, really creates the potential for trust to build. And I say potential because it's incumbent on us as teachers, once if we go this route and establish the norms and values of the online sharing experience, as well as what classroom sharing will look like, for us to actually follow through with that and to hold people accountable to the norms and values that were stated at the beginning of were stated and agreed to at the beginning of the school year. And that can happen through checkouts. So students can be asked, again, using Flipgrid or using a forum or even an anonymous sort of feedback in an LMS. Students can be asked to just report on their experience of the classroom, and do they feel that the norms and values established have been affirmed, what was experienced in that class, what struggles were experienced. And part of the norms and values would probably be a mechanism to follow up, something very self-reflective and named as a process that the class itself can use should the experiences start to separate themselves from the norms and values agreed to. And another way to try to build trust and build this regular experience of each other in an affirmative kind of a way that emphasizes listening over speaking and a recognition is to take ourselves a little bit out of the equation and try to use student facilitators. Yeah, if we have LMSs that or video conferencing tools that have breakout room options, we can assign students to facilitate small groups using the same norms and values that we agreed to as a large group class. The student facilitator process can also be used with Flipgrid. You can have a student, the facilitator of a small group, create the grid and then begin the process of the thread that is responded to, and then be responsible for the responses along that thread to moderate and redirect and probe as a facilitator might do, based on the subject specific for that class. Again, it could be finding a way to share the working out of a math equation or a science problem or a short answer in an English class or dramatic reading or something in the theater class. So there are a number of different options within subject-specific areas. So I think Flipgrid has the potential to be a really great tool for this culture building because it does give us an opportunity to see each other across space and time, the limitations of the online. You can use it from the live school class as an activity off-site, and so students can continue to engage with Flipgrid even though they come back. And then when they come back in the classroom, you can reflect together on the Flipgrid that was created and have some emotional engagement and feelings of belonging that come out of a common shared experience and laughter and maybe something funny that was shared or exchanged or happened within the grid itself. Again, if it's being used for a non-subject specific purpose like the check-in, and it can be used for a weekly checkout or a unit checkout, in which the Flipgrid can be, the prompt can be, what essential learning did you take away from this experience, and in what way did it relate to the work you did with your peers? And so each person can offer that, hear each other's experiences, respond potentially if that's the way you construct it. And so it literally, in shaping the kind of sequence of engagement together, of encountering each other together, creates an opportunity to feel like we belong to that grid. So the name itself, obviously, chosen for a reason. So that's sort of an overview of how Flipgrid can be a tool used in conjunction with organizing classroom tools to help foster classroom culture, or what we've called today the building of a relational class culture. Okay, I hope the course is going really well for you, and we'll follow up soon.